world of science and innovation is undoubtedly awesome, but it's not quite as awesome as some science fiction worlds. But we get closer to them every day. As proof, there are many real-world inventions and ideas that originated or were inspired by science fiction. Yesterday's science fiction has become today's science fact. Let's take a look at some innovations that originated in the far-off future. Basically, everyone and their mother knows about Star Trek, essentially predicting mobile phones. While 1,000,001 videos and articles have been made about that, we want to talk about something much more futuristic. While the Universal Translator originated in 1945's First Contact by Murray Leinster, Star Trek certainly gets the credit for popularizing it. In the Star Trek universe, each ship and communicator comes equipped with a Universal Translator to translate alien languages into English for both the crew and the audience. While it's unlikely that we'll ever be able to communicate in real time with aliens, we may be able to do so with fellow Earthlings. There are apps and programs that can allow people who speak different languages to communicate in real time. Similarly to Star Trek, it usually involves you speaking into your communicator. While it may not be perfect, and it may be a little clunky, it will only get smoother as time progresses and engineers continue to work. There's even a group working to build this technology and make it open source, which is always in humanity's best interest. In the year 2062, any food you want is just a button press away. This is of course the reality of the Jetsons, however, it may soon be your reality as well. At this point, people have been 3D printing for decades, and side note, the concept of 3D printing was first imagined by a good friend, Murray Leinster, in his short story, Things Pass By. Was this guy a time traveler? Recently, scientists have begun to explore the possibility of 3D printing food. Much more rudimentary than Star Trek's food replicators, but very close to the Jetsons' food machine. While this idea is still very early in its life, they still need to figure out how to cook and print at the same time. The benefits of a fully realized version of this technology could be huge. While I don't believe traditional cooking will ever disappear, this is a far better alternative to fast food for those with busy schedules. Not to mention the possibilities of ending world hunger. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. While it's true that Star Wars is usually categorized as science fantasy, it still works for our purposes here today. All the way back in A New Hope, we get our first look at a 3D holographic communication. While it's not exactly a two-way conversation, and more like a voicemail, it's still cool nonetheless. By the time Empire Strikes Back comes along, we see a fully realized two-way holographic communication, which would then of course go on to pop up in various Star Wars films. My favorite version is the one where Palpatine is using a spider-like projector that's walking backwards. Flash forward to today, where the technology for two-way holographic communication exists now. You may not have it in your home, and it may not be tinted blue, but soon enough, you may be able to bow before the glorious holographic Emperor. Who knows? If they push this tech a little further, we may see fully holographic displays that we can interact with, like Tony Stark. That's no moon, but it is a prediction from Edward Everett Hale in 1869's The Brick Moon. Written as a scientific journal, the story describes the construction of, well, a moon made out of bricks that orbits the Earth. Well, it correctly predicts the idea of a man-made object in space. He was certainly off about the building material. Interestingly, this work also is the first fictitious description of a satellite. And on top of that, he also surmised that it would take 4 visible satellites for a GPS to work. A man certainly ahead of his time for the 1860s. This prediction is not widespread, and it is a bit speculative on our end, but hear us out. In the original series episode Court Martial, Captain Kirk has to jettison a research pod while a crew member is still inside. These are the decisions a captain has to make, especially when at red alert and the safety of the ship is at stake. However, Upon review, it is discovered that the ship was not at red alert, but actually yellow alert, meaning that Captain Kirk went against protocol and essentially killed a man. A situation complicated by the fact that Kirk and this crew member have a history together. During the course of Captain Kirk's court-martial hearing, there is a visual recording of Captain Kirk launching the pod while the ship is at yellow alert. Despite the fact, Kirk remembers the ship being at red alert. In the face of such strong evidence, there is no choice but to convict the captain. However, it turns out that the crew member was still alive, and this was all a ploy to get revenge on Kirk. He sabotaged the ship's computers in order to make it look like Kirk ejected the pod at yellow alert, even though it really did happen at red alert. So, how do you take a recording of someone and make it look like they did something they didn't do? Perhaps with generative AI? We admit that this is working backwards, as AI is never mentioned in this episode, but it's not hard to imagine the crew member using AI to alter the tapes and frame the captain. It's always interesting to look back and see what we may have gotten right about our own future. The fun thing is, the future is ever approaching, and who knows what wild predictions of the past or present may turn out to be true. If you want to look into it yourself, we recommend starting with the articles we used while making this video, all of which are linked below. And if you want to stay ahead of the future, we recommend subscribing so you don't miss the next tasty knowledge burger.